Hi, welcome to my channel, Craft with Barbara Drake, and I'm going to be doing some watercoloring today. The stamp set that I'm using is Hand-Penned Petals by Stampin' Up, and I'm going to be stamping with Sierra Sand, and I'm going to choose a light color because I want to have the watercoloring look kind of muted. So I'm going to stamp it out. Actually, I should have stamped off first and then stamped on my watercolor paper. And I'm using the side that's of the watercolor paper it has a more of a bumpy, more of a textured side. So I'm using that side. If I would have stamped off first, that image would have been lighter than what you see there. And then I'm going to use the Pear Pizzazz for the leaves. And what I'm doing is squeezing the lid down into the pad to get some of the ink up on the lid there. And I accidentally closed it because I'm so used to just stamping images, so I'm going to open it back up. I'm going to use my water painter. There is water in the barrel, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit out of water onto the lid and mix it in with the ink. I'm using the fine point on the water painter. And I'm just staying inside of the lines. If you go out just a little bit, it doesn't really matter. This is it's going to be die cut anyway. And I am not squeezing water out of the barrel when I am watercoloring on the paper. I'm just using the brush nib in this technique. I'm just going around, and what's nice about the watercoloring is you can go back once it dries and you can darken out whatever areas you want. Just you want to make sure that it's dry before you move on, because if you go over top of it while it's still wet, your water is going to it's going to bubble up, and it could possibly it could run into another color that's nearby. So if you have a heat tool, you can use your heat tool to help speed up the drying process. I have a rag next to me, and I finished all the leaves, so now I'm squeezing water out of the barrel to clean that nib. You want to get out all the color before you move on to another color. So I'm using polished pink here, and you can see I already have some ink smushed down on the lid from prior use. And again, I close it up because I'm so used to using stamped images and not watercoloring. So I'm squeezing a little bit of water out. And it's okay to leave that in your lid. It's not going to hurt anything. And it'll be there for next time. So I don't want to start with the flowers near the leaves because they're still wet. So I'm going to move to another area of the flowers and start while the leaves are drying. And if you can't tell exactly, in some of your images they won't have connected lines, just get your stamp out, or the stamp set, whatever it's in. If you're working with a rubber stamp, you can look at it. But I use the image on the stamp case. It will help you guide you where the flowers connect and disconnect. Because some of the images sometimes can be hard to tell especially if I would have stamped off first and had a lighter image. You may want to refer back to the stamp case to see your actual image, to have a little better view of it. And again, as it dries, you can always go back over it and darken things up. Have a few more flowers left there. And I'm trying to keep the center open so I can go in with another color for the center of the flower. And actually, when you're putting your card together, you can put a gem or a sequins inside of the flower as an embellishment. This is where I'm looking at the image because I wasn't sure exactly where the flower petal began and ended. And if I wanted the flowers to be a little lighter, I would just use more water, put more water, squeeze it out into the lid there, and then grab some ink for a lighter color. Now, what some people will do is use your ink refills. Just take a drop it into the lid, and then squeeze your barrel, get some water out of the barrel, and go from there. Now, if you do prefer to use your ink refill, the colors are more intense when you're using it out of the refill. You're going to have a more bolder and brighter color than you will doing what I did by squeezing the lid onto the ink pad. So here I need to do the large flower, and I'm going to go darker. I decided to go darker, so I'm grabbing some more ink and less water to make that flower darker. And I believe I said this has a die cut with it, so I'm going to die cut it out and put a card together with it. This video here is just showing you me going through the watercolor process of it. And at the end, I will have a picture of the finished card. And I'm going to be grabbing another color here to do the inside of the flower. Oh, wait a minute, here I think I'm going to go back and I do the leaves darker. I'm going to grab the pear pizzazz, I'm going to get it back out and go over the leaves and make them darker. I decided to touch up some of the flowers there in a darker pink. Same color, I'm grabbing into the lid there where the ink has less water. Watercoloring can be very, very fun, especially if you like to color, which I do, and I am by no means an expert on watercoloring at all. Like when it comes to the shading and wondering where the light reflects on your object, I just like to go with it and let it be what it's going to be. Now you very well could do this using your blends, but when you're working with watercolor, it's best to use your watercolor paper that's used specifically for watercolor, because you know it needs to have that thickness and the type of whatever they put inside of the watercolor paper, cotton, I believe. Some of them have cotton in it, and I'm not sure what else. On this project here, I didn't have to use my heat gun. It seemed to be drying okay on its own. Now I'm squeezing water out of the water painter and getting some of that color out of it. Just going over the pink flowers some more, pulling in some more of the color on the edges. Now this is where I'm going to switch, I believe, where I go back to the Pear Pizzazz, because I want to darken up those leaves some. And I'm just going to grab some of the darker of the ink and go down the lines there in the middle of the leaves. It really makes the leaves stand out more. By doing that. Again, you want to make sure they're dry before you go in and make it darker, or else it could start to bleed into the other color, but depending on the look you're going for. It does take a little more time when you're doing watercoloring than if you're using your Stampin' blends. But I think you have more control when you're doing watercolor than the alcohol markers. It does take more time, but I think, especially I think for a beginner, in my opinion, it's easier doing the watercoloring, having a little bit more control. I don't think I have, yeah, I know, I did. I have die cut before when you're die cutting on your watercolor paper, because it is fairly thick, a lot thicker than your regular cardstock. Now I'm going to take the yellow soft saffron, and I need to clean that brush out. Again, you got to squeeze that barrel and get the last color that you just used out of there. So I'm getting the soft saffron. You can see I need to adjust the camera, and I'm just doing the inside of the flower. Again, you want to make sure the color that's surrounding that is dry, or it will start to go up inside of there. And that's fine if that's the look you're going for, and you'll see the finished product. I brought that color up into the pink, and it will turn it kind of orange for the center. Here I wasn't sure on the flower. It looked like it was missing right there, a large spot, but actually that's the way it's stamped out. So I'm going back to the pink. Again, I'm going to clean that barrel out. I'm going back to the polished pink. I'm going to grab a little bit more and fill in that area. Excuse my head there in the way. And that looks like it for the flower. Again, I did go back. You'll see when I put the card together. I'm still out of camera. There we go. I brought that little bit of that yellow up towards the pink, and it turns a little bit orange. So you will see my finished product. I'm going to put a card together, and I will show you. Okay, this is my finished card. And what I did, I stamped another image from the Hand-Penned Petals. I used the one down in the bottom right corner, and I went ahead and watercolored it in Daffodil Delight. And what I did was I stamped off first when I did it, where this one I didn't. And you can see a little bit of a difference where the stamped image here is a little bit darker than this one up here. So for the white, the basic white cardstock, I used the embossing folder called Painted Texture because I wanted it to have, instead of a plain white background, so I used that embossing folder on it. And I used, for the sentiment, I used the Ornate Frame die right here. I used that one. Again, you know how much I love those dies. And for the scalloped edge, it actually comes with the penned flowers. I can get it open here. So when I die cut these two flowers out here, I used this die here and this one here to cut them out. And then I used the scalloped edge to give that look there. And then for the embellishments, I used the classic matte dots for the black embellishments. I actually heat embossed this in black, the anything is possible sentiment. And then for the inside piece, I just stamped off using this stamp here. I stamped off in Daffodil Delight and then stamped on it in both corners, just to give the inside a little bit of a decoration. So there is my finished watercolor card. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I can tell you I really enjoyed the watercoloring, and I will be doing more of it. And so hopefully the more I do, the better I get. So I will have all the products that I use listed below the video in case you were interested in any of them. Here is my host code for the month of February. And I would appreciate it if you liked the video to give me a thumbs up and make a comment if you have any. And that is my card. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, bye.